Amen. All right, so hopefully this is a good start for everyone, okay, and a good beginning to understand. And I might go through chapter 3 a little bit slower next week just to kind of hit on a few points. I may not, so don't hold me to that. We'll may cover more of those things when we deal with like the roles of men and women and other things that go back to where the problems are in relationships. But this is the part of the teaching we call the Afterburn. So if you have questions or comments, hopefully I was reasonably cohesive considering my head is still clogged and I'm not feeling 100%. But, and Marty, hopefully you're enjoying this since it was your idea. So was it good? It was okay for you, all right? You know, I really was struggling to, you know, it takes a lot to write a new teaching. When you look up the words for covenant, there are over 300 verses that have it in there, another bunch that have the word agreement or anything to do with agreeing and agreement. You know, if you're just going to look at just the verses, the individual verses, not the verses before and after, hundreds of verses you have to go through to put a teaching together, okay? And that takes time, okay? And so I appreciate Rabbi Tom last week was talking about how much time I work, okay? And so continue to pray that I'll have the health that I need in order to have the time and that this will work out. Because I have so many other things I want to teach you guys that are there that I want to share, but man, I need the time. All right, so anybody want to ask a comment or question, you can raise your hand. If you're on live stream, Robert will take care of that, and we'll see if we can get a few of these in. Then we'll begin with Michael. Go ahead.
The definition alone might drop. You can stop right there. And my lot is 5 teachings, by the way.
You're what?
I'm thinking this is going to go 5.
Oh, you're going for 5 on this?
All right. First of all, I want to encourage all those that are breaking apart from their family member to be encouraged. It's just something that you got to go through, and I want to thank Yahweh for staying with me as I trusted Him when I was breaking away. I didn't know where this road was going to lead, but I trusted Him, and I'm so elated on where this ended up thus far. I'm looking forward to the rest of the journey. But my question is, and one more statement. Dispensation teaching in the Christian church, they teach that new covenants replace older covenants, and that's where they get in trouble. That's where they get in trouble,
and we'll cover that a little bit, but what you'll see is that new covenants are renewing of covenants with individuals where there may be added detail disclosed, even though that added detail may have already been there, but we're not hearing about it. I'm sure that Adam was given a lot more instruction, all the way from him all the way to Noah. There was a lot more instruction than just don't eat one tree, because otherwise, what's Yahweh all upset about in chapter 6 if the people didn't know or shouldn't have known what they should have been doing and not doing? So a lot of this stuff is the implied as opposed to the openly overt.
Okay. And now my question is just a little off track, but you did mention it in Genesis 31, verse 50, when Loam was making the charge to Yaakov about not going with any other daughters but his. My question is this the first statement from doing polygamy or anything like that?
I don't know. Let me Jeremiah 31. Oh, Genesis 31 and verse 50. No, I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with polygamy at all. Polygamy. I mean, it really has to do with, you'll see often, including actually in, we kind of skipped it in Genesis chapter 6, but the idea of the sons of Elohim taking the daughters of man and the whole thing, it's always that male-female relationship that ends up causing all the problems, as long as when it's the wrong ones. Okay, you see this with Israel after Balaam, and then we have this problem. It leads right into Pinchas, where the women of Moab come in. okay, and they cause a problem. And I'm not saying the women are always the problem. I'm just saying it is, when we end up interacting in relationship, and there's no higher relationship than a man and a woman, which then creates more children and more people in terms of, going outside the camp. Okay, and this creates the unequally yoked problem. And we see this with Esau. Esau had no problem going and getting women where he shouldn't be going. Okay, and this caused a big problem for his parents, and he didn't care, And so that's where we want to then help our children to understand why it is so important that they be patient to meet someone in the camp. Okay, so that's more what's going on in Genesis there, that it has to do with keeping things within the family and within. That's why, remember, many times Abraham said for Isaac, he said, go outside. Don't take from over here. I want from inside the camp, so to speak. Go find a wife for my son. Okay? And so we should have that understanding from there. The multiple wife thing, I know that's like a third rail for a lot of people. Look, okay, just set the record straight. The Bible, as far as I can see, has absolutely zero problem with it. I also find zero instruction to do it. So I don't know why anybody thinks it's important. Okay? I'm concerned with the do's and the don'ts. Okay? I'm not as want to focus on the it doesn't say, so it kind of, you can. Okay? The you cans can get you in a lot of trouble. I would focus on the do's and the don'ts and not the it's okays. All right? We see multiple wife situations. I don't see any of them that worked very well. But I can tell you what the implied. Do you see any place where it was the man who instigated the situation? No, it was always the wife. So to all you men out there that want more than one wife, as soon as it's your wife's idea, I guess it's no problem. But it has to be her idea. It was Sarah's idea. It was Rachel's idea. It was Leah's idea. It was not Jacob's idea. It was not Abraham's idea. Okay? That's what I see. And it doesn't show anywhere that it became the wife's idea after the man beat on her, with that idea for, until she finally gave in. It has to be her initiating idea, not yours. The first thought, the first idea, the first mention has to come from her. That's what I see. So unless your wife's going to be the one going up to you, hey, by the way, I had this great idea. I think we should get another wife. I don't see that happening. Okay? Is that reasonable? I mean, let's do what we see in Scripture. But the guys out there promoting this act like it's the highest level of Torah and we're all sinning if we don't do it. And I don't see a single instruction to do this. And we're not to add or take away. I do see that in the places where it was done, nobody got in trouble for it. Okay, so it's not a don't either. But there's a lot of things out there that there's no instruction against that are really not that good for you. There's not a single verse that says don't smoke cigarettes. There isn't. So is it a sin to smoke a cigarette? No. It doesn't break any commandment. It's stupid to do it. I'm not calling you stupid if you smoke, but I mean, if you don't make some effort to get rid of it, you should, if you know something is going to kill you and make you very ill, etc., you should not keep doing it. But that doesn't mean it's Torah. Torah does not cover every single possible thing. Some things, he expects us to use our own sense of wisdom. Okay? And so he gives us examples and we can see things. But he expects you to figure out that if something is causing you a problem with your health, you probably shouldn't do it. If something's causing you physical harm, you probably shouldn't do it. I mean, it doesn't take, a genius to figure those things out. All right, anybody else? And this time with a question about the teaching? Sorry, it was a good question, Michael. Go ahead, Diana.
I just want to say that I am very blessed with this teaching. Thank you, Marty, for that idea. For a couple of weeks, my son and I have been discussing about covenant, and I've been trying to explain them the best way possible, but this comes at the right time, so I am very, very blessed, and I think he's going to be blessed too as soon as he hears it. So
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Awesome. Anybody else? Rabbi Tom? I mean, I was excited about it when I started putting it together, so I really appreciated Marty's suggestion as well.
I'd just like to, if I could, make a little comment about polygamy or plural marriage, we have to consider if you have 2 or 3 wives, you also have 2 or 3 mothers-in-law.
That is true. Although I've only had one mother-in-law, and she really was never a problem for me, so. Okay. But that is one of the old kind of jokes. I get that. All right, Dawn, go ahead.
Nate actually kind of wrote this down, and it got my mind spinning about, aren't we referred to in some point as a garden, and we bring forth fruit, and that fruit is our children and the fruit of our lives and different things like that. So aren't we supposed to, we were talking about nobody wants to take responsibility for their own actions and circumstances. Isn't that like tending our own garden and taking care of that first? And then there's another verse that says, a good tree can't bear bad fruit and a bad tree can't bear good fruit. So doesn't that a little bit about putting our roots in the right well and drinking from the right source and then bringing forth good fruit? Just the whole garden thing got my mind spinning, and I really, really appreciate this teaching.
Appreciate that. That's all covered in the teaching on seeds, gardens, and I didn't do that one yet. Okay. That's one of the ones on my list. You could check with Aubrey. Aubrey has the list of all the teachings I said I'm going to do. But I am going to do a teaching that uses all of the agricultural metaphors. All right? And so that will be included in that. So that is on something I've wanted to do. That will be a fairly that'll be a big teaching, but a lot of agricultural metaphors in Scripture. And so, but the ones that you just used were right on. Okay, those are spot on. Anybody else? Okay, on this side, we got Shira. Robert, go ahead while we're waiting. You can get one from the...
Okay, from Adrian and Patricia Bogle. Chapter 3 is the Nahash, Lucifer, or the person we call Satan. If so, was Lucifer, Satan, physically changed into the form of a serpent?
Okay, the Nachash, which is talked about here, there's a lot of stuff here that we have to look at metaphorically. There's a lot of stuff that we have to look at literally, and we're not always going to be clear which way we need to go with each thing. Okay, I know I did make the point, though, that according to the way this works, it doesn't say that there was anything about looking like a snake the way we think of it today until after the issue became a problem there, after the fall, so to speak. We'll have to delve into that in another teaching where we can really dig into that. I think that we would only be trying to, again, as human beings, try to understand things that are above and beyond our ability as, three-dimensional creatures who live on this planet. We're dealing with spirit beings like Hasatan, who took on a physical form and interacted with man, the original man, and also interacts with man even through to this time. And understanding what that looks like is a whole different sort of thing. Because we're not talking about literally crushing the head and crushing the heel either. Those are, of course, picture languages and metaphors to other things. So, sorry for not answering that question more clearly. There's just not time to do that right now. Okay, Shira.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Steve. This is so exciting. Just going into the depths of the covenant. Some of us have been covenanted for a while, and we remember very well going in the water and making the declarations and having you blow the shofar over us and getting goosebumps. But it was a wonderful experience. But I like what you said about, we really ought to put those 8 declarations on our wall. I think I might go home and do that.
Well, what I might do is ask CC to make something real artistically pretty, with the 8 declarations that we can kind of make so people can hang them up or something.
Oh, man. Couple of observations. You mentioned a couple times you really got into coveting. And, the 10th commandment, that coveting is underneath all the evil that we do. And immediately I thought of that verse that Paul says, piety, or in the King James, godliness, with contentment is great gain. And I just want to testify, I'm going on 6 years under your teaching, Rabbi, and he has used used so many times to convict me to be contented. And I'm now in a place in my life where I just can't get over how happy I am, how peaceful I feel about everything.
Awesome.
It is great gain. I feel richer than ever before. Of course, I was always really filthy rich, but now I'm
Well, I can
clean rich.
I can testify to my knowing you as long as I have that you were not always content.
Yes.
And when you came here from New Hampshire, you had lots of issues that were disturbing your peace. You had lots of, and those things have little by little all fallen off to the side and been resolved and dealt with. And so I've seen that fruit, and I do appreciate that, because it's good to see that shalom that you have. That, and a lot of you, we may do another teaching also to deal with the fact that that's our biggest problem, is that we have no shalom. And we allow everything and anything to steal our shalom. Okay, wait, let me write that down. Aubrey, you got that one down there? Shalom? Okay, so I'm sure I have that written down many times as I write these things down on my list. But yes, go ahead.
Okay, just one other quick observation. I appreciated your going into the violence, the depth of the violence that was being done, not just physical, but the reference to Ezekiel 22. Her priests have done violence to my teaching, and the thought just came to me, wouldn't violence to his teaching be actually the starting point on the path to all these horrible kinds of evil? Absolutely.
Absolutely. And by the way, I know that this is part of the restraint problem that we all have. Is I want to make sure that, again, I only read chapter 3. This wasn't a problem with Shira's statement or any of yours necessarily, but, well, I know for the Bogles, they were asking that question about the Nachash. I only read chapter 3 for what point? What was the point of reading chapter 3? That there was consequences to demonstrate that there was a covenant, and then here are the consequences playing out. Okay? The same thing we see happening with Noah right before. It's the same thing. The consequences are playing out. We just didn't see the covenant prior. Okay? And so I wanted to show you what that looked like, because here was a covenant where he said, you can do this, this, and this is why I put you here. And then you see that it gets broken, and then there are consequences. And so, of course, that chapter 3 has so much other stuff in it, prophetically, etc., that we all want to jump in on all of that stuff. Sometimes I have to ask you, that's where you have to show restraint and focus to stay on what the point is of that section for today's purposes. Okay? For today's purposes, it's to demonstrate that in chapter 2, there essentially was a covenant. And in chapter 3, we see it broken and the consequences. And that's what it looks like, and that's what we see happening again with Noah. We see it happening again with Israel in many places. And then we see covenants being reestablished. And that's why I say that wording is interesting. We said, and now Noah, I'm going to establish my covenant, not a covenant, but my covenant, the covenant, with you and your children. And so we see this covenant thing, I think, has to do with ultimately ending up back in that garden, given what we were supposed to have at peace, to till the land and do what we need to do and have all that stuff. Okay? Because we got thrown out of the garden. It's all about getting back to the garden, right? Essentially. That's what the kingdom's going to be like. Okay, who's next? Okay, Robert, go ahead.
All right, from Warnhard, he has a comment. The Israelites didn't ask any questions or hesitate when they agreed to the covenant in Exodus 19, due to the fact that they had true fear, Yare, unto Yahweh. The fear, Yare, we need to have constantly.
Yeah, I think that the people were impressed. They were in awe to whatever degree, plus with the fear. But I think that you also have a situation there that sometimes happens in marriages also, which is the wife or the husband will say, well, if I had known. And so they're signing on, they should have known, is basically what it is. And so they agreed to it sight unseen, so to speak, but they should have known who they were dealing with. And so they have that awe and respect. The problem is, at some point, we also lose that level of awe and wonderment. We become complacent and jaded with the amazing things that our Creator has already done and continues to do in our lives. And that's where we end up going off searching again and then end up in all kinds of ditches because we forget who it was and how it was that He got us to where we are now. Because we're always it's kind of like, when people talk about, say, like a gateway drug, that you take like a relatively minor drug, whether it's a prescription drug or one of the illegal drugs, and then it elevates where that's not strong enough anymore. Now you need something stronger and something stronger because you become jaded. Your body gets tolerant to, and it just doesn't have the same effect. I think we get that way with Yahweh. We get complacent with His signs and wonders, with His miracles, and we just take it for granted. And it's just not impressive as it was before. But a lot of you got to go back and listen to your own testimonies. Write it down for yourself so you don't forget what He's done for you and where you were. Okay? I've had some of the guys in the men's Marco Polo, I'm not going to mention who, but make comments like, you will never get me to stop keeping Torah because my family won't let me ever do that because I am not the person I was before, and they are so happy that I'm not. And it's because of Torah. He says, there's no taking this from me because it's changed me and saved my marriage and my family. How many people out there have testimonies like that? But then we become at some point, we can become jaded. I mean, even the person who made that statement could turn around one day and act like he forgot he had talked that way. Because it becomes too everyday, old hat, whatever, Robert.
From Thomas Lasardo, was Noah's walk agreement with Yahweh the same as Moshe's walk with Yahweh?
Look, ultimately, all of the walks with Yahweh are the same. You know what they are? Exodus 19. They agree, whatever He says, they do. All the walks are the same. There really is only one covenant. Adam was having the same covenant. Noah has the same covenant. You're Yahweh and I'm not. That's how it starts. Okay.
That leads into Aaron Murray's question. Are covenants layered, as in one supersedes the another? If you break one, you fall back into the previous, or are all covenants concurrent?
The difference in the covenants is only a matter of who they're being made with. Okay? The covenant, like I just said, is always the same. Yahweh says, and whoever He's covenanting with is expected to do or not do. Does that make sense to everyone? There's no big deal, no difference. Every covenant's been the same. There's an expectation of you do what He says and you don't do what He says not to do, and then you're walking with Him in agreement. Now, in some covenants, like by the time we get to Moshe, he lays it out in great detail. That doesn't mean that he didn't lay it out in great detail in other places. We understand through some peripheral writings and some of the stories that have gone down through time that there were those like Noah and like Shem that actually ran schools to instruct in Torah. We could believe that even went back to Enoch, probably, had schools. And Adam, schools to teach the children going down what's right and what's wrong. What to do and what not to do, to be part of covenant. And apparently, the world basically decided to go in just its own way, and that's where we ended up in Genesis 6. Okay, next.
RG's question is, does Isaiah 14, verse 13, fill the gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2?
Okay, wait. I just was thinking of something to the previous question also before I get to that one. When you're asking about concurrent and all that other stuff, this whole teaching is going to try to answer that question. Okay, by the time we're finished, you should have an answer to understand. Because the dispensational Christian mindset is that somehow a new covenant wipes out the old one and that everything is a totally different deal. Okay, and I can promise you that the deal that Noah was being told he was about to get was the same deal everybody else had, but now it was with him and his children. Everybody else is about to get wiped out. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, Daweed?
I just wanted to say that I really appreciated Marty's idea that this thing, because it's good to know what we're not, but it's sometimes I haven't heard anybody really try to define what we actually are. And I really appreciate this teaching, and I'm looking forward to the rest of it.
Appreciate that. But I want to make sure that I've not confused the issue. I am not, let me say it one more time. I am not teaching you what you are. I'm teaching you what you should be. Okay? What you are is your choice. You could be covenanted or not covenanted. What I'm telling you is that the choice you should be making is to be covenanted. So you're getting instructed on what you should choose to be, should you choose to be that. Okay? This is not a teaching about what you are. That's completely up to you. You have free will. You could be a wheat or a tare. You could be covenanted or not covenanted. That's all up to you. So let's be clear that I'm not, and it's not to correct the weed, but we can say these things and not realize how it comes out, but it's not teaching you what you are. But I am trying to give you an appropriate label. If you need a label, I think this is the appropriate label. Just make sure you use it if you are, not if you are kinda. Okay? Hopefully we're also going to see as we go through the covenant teaching that you're not partial. Okay, I'm going to write this down so I make sure I cover it again. Okay? There is no status called partially covenanted. Okay? I want to make sure I hit that again. You can't be kinda in. Okay, what did Yahweh say in Exodus? I keep saying Leviticus, I don't know why, but Exodus 19. What did he say in Exodus 19? He said, you are diligently going to obey everything I say, not some of what I say. You're either in or you're out. Some of you are still on the fence. It's not going to work. Some of you are all frustrated in your life. Guess what? It's probably because you're on the fence. Get off the fence. Maybe things will start fixing. Some of you are still not learning how to live on less, and so therefore you're frustrated because you're still coveting and craving and you want higher lifestyles. There are people in this world who live basically in dirt shacks, nothing. I mean, we're talking as poverty as you can imagine, and they're as happy as can be and at peace. Not everybody, but there are people like that because they just don't need. We need because we crave, we desire, we crave. That's why we have people that are killing themselves who are millionaires. And you're like, why would they be killing themselves? They're millionaires. Because they're broke as millionaires because they're spending it on whatever they're spending. There's no amount of money you can make that you can't spend. You'll spend it. You'll find a way. But do you need all that? Can you be content? What did Paul say? He says, I learned to be content in whatever state I'm in. We don't have that peace. We're craving and craving. And that's part of it is because that's why we don't covenant. Because there's still parts of the covenant that you don't want to do, or things that you want to do that you don't want to stop doing. And so be careful calling yourself covenanted. Excuse me, you could be striving to be part of the covenant, striving to keep it. We all fail all the time. But if you're going to call yourself covenanted, examine yourself and see if you are. And work at it and work at it. It's like a marriage. I don't care what anybody tells you. If they say this, they're lying. No marriages just work. They take work. They take effort. Now, a lot of people hide that because they just want to show everybody that, hey, our marriage is wonderful, it's awesome, and my spouse is perfect. But they're lying to you. All relationships take an effort. We do not naturally fit. We naturally have some things in common and have a certain amount of fit, but to actually walk, as we're talking about, two can't walk together unless they're in complete agreement. No two people completely agree without making the effort to come to agreement. Amen? So the same thing with our Heavenly Father. We don't naturally just fit into agreement with Him. We have to work at it. And we have to submit. And we've all talked about that until we're pretty sick of hearing it. But submission doesn't start happening until you don't like it, until you don't agree. But then you'd have to do it anyway with a good attitude. And our Heavenly Father expects us to be submissive. And some of you are going to have to realize that means He's talking about that stuff you're still not doing that you're supposed to do, but you don't want to. Or the stuff you don't want to stop doing because you still like doing it. Submission time. Here's your test. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov. We love you guys. We got Stephen from both sides. Blessings to everyone.